And here we are.
Here we are. Welcome, everybody, to our very first episode of the ReVIBal podcast. And I'm very, 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 very excited to do this episode today because Chuck is going to be sharing with you all his story and his journey. And I get to interview and pull out all of the juicy details. So brace yourself. Chuck, are you
I'm
ready to
not
be
bracing
open?
myself.
Yeah, you should be. Are you ready to be open and vulnerable and
I
real
am.
with the people?
Oh God, yes, okay, maybe yes.
Yeah, I know. Good luck.
It'll be good. It'll be
It'll
good.
be good. It's like such a great opportunity, and this is such a great medium for this kind of for to share your story because I think that you have a really incredible story and you've done a lot of work online and you've written books and you've posted some really honest and vulnerable things, but I'm not sure that I've ever seen you consecutively narrate for the people who follow you or the people who have followed you in the past, like your kind of A to Z journey from being in the ministry and a church planter and a Pentecostal pastor to the enlightened ex-religious leader that you are now. So I think that a lot of people are going to appreciate this. So we'll just deep breathe and relax into the process and
Oh,
ah, yeah.
yes.
So
I'm thinking, when I was doing ministry, one of the things that my kids got tired of me mentioning them in the sermons, and so I had to pay them $1 every time I mentioned their name. And every time I mentioned Trisha's name, Trisha would she had to get the preacher's wife face so she didn't give off, like, am I mad? Am I not mad? So this time it'll be mainly about me. So no, I won't get anybody else in trouble. I won't owe my kids anything.
right, yeah. And like the the world I think is actually a lot more forgiving sometimes than the church. And so you don't have to be as guarded. I think that people tend to like get it when you're just sharing about your life, more
Hmm.
so maybe like we talked about in our episode 00 about the perfection standard
Yeah,
as a minister that you felt like you had to uphold. And yeah, so Trisha has to get her game face on because everybody is like side eyeing her now,
right.
in church to see like what kind of vibe she's going to get off so that they can have something to
Exactly.
talk about in the car on the way
Right.
home. But
Can
that's
you
not,
believe what he said about her?
yeah.
And then she's thinking, I can't believe what he just told about me.
Yeah. But see, here's the beautiful thing about the podcast and just kind of sharing it with the big bad world is that the people who are probably wanting to be most snarky or judgmental, whatever, about what you're going to say, um, probably won't listen anyways.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I
So,
agree.
yeah, it's all
And
good.
Trish and I have, just as a little background, Trish and
Mhm.
I have been married 30 years.
Oh, give me a break. Tell it. You've
Trisha,
earned every single one of
Trisha
those
and
years.
we started dating when she was 14. I was 15. Lived in the same neighborhood. We dated for 5 years. It took me a year to convince her that I was the one for her. I sent little, kids in the neighborhood. I'd give them flowers and send them down to give them to Trisha from me and poetry and stuff. And finally, she came to the revelation that I was the most important guy that she'd ever met. But um, we've been married. I think we dated for 5 years, then got married. So we've been together. Probably, I think this year was our 32nd year anniversary, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So about 32 years.
And this is married or together?
We've been together, add 5 more years to that. So pretty
Yeah.
much my entire life since we were teenagers, we've been together. So,
Yeah. And I have a similar story where I married like a high school. We weren't sweethearts, but we were like best friends. And it's really interesting to have that kind of an experience where you marry someone from your childhood because it's very, very, very special. But like everything, there's kind of like two sides to that coin. And so when you go your whole life, I think honestly, you can hit a point where you're like, did I forget to like fish in the big sea? I mean, did I just marry young and safe and like easy, you know. And I mean, we both have like really incredible spouses. I'm just trying to be vulnerable about some
Right.
of the things that I think that people who marry like really, really young, after 10 years or so, because they're still young, but they've been together a long time, they can have some, they can wrestle a little.
And you know, the longer you've been together, you know each other pretty well,
Mm-hmm.
and so you know you have to work. We have to work hard on, um, you know, keeping things fresh, keeping conversations fresh. You know, she already knows what I like to eat, what I like to watch on TV. You know, vice versa, and so you know we have to be intentional about relationships in order to cause it to continue to grow, so we don't stagnate at a place.
Right. And then just for the other people who don't have this experience, you know, I know that a lot of people, they get all their, sow their oats and get all of that out when they are young, and then they settle down and get married. And so maybe a conversation that they have in their relationship to deal with is like past and past relationships. So there's always something that you're going to be sorting out. I've been really grateful to have married somebody that I know that's worked really well for me.
Hmm.
And I'm interested to see what my kids choose, because I know your daughter also married her high school sweetheart,
Yeah,
right?
we said you don't have to do it the way that we did. And they got, you know, they started dating in high school. I think Michaela was 14, and now she's married in college, and they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of took a very similar track, which is okay. But you know, it was, you know, I tried to let them know up front, you know, you don't have to do it this way. There,
Yeah,
but I'm proud of both of them.
yeah,
Both of our
yeah,
kids. Our kids are great.
yeah. Well, I'm freaked out because my daughter's about to be 14. So you telling me that everybody's meeting their husband and wife when they're 14, I'm like, this is not possible. She's a baby.
Yeah, I know. And they
So,
get in some places, we got driver's license at 14 and a half when I was a kid. And I'm thinking now, who lets somebody drive at 14 and a half?
yeah, this is not okay.
It's not good.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna come back. So you guys got married. How old were you when you got married?
I was 19. No, she was 19. I was 20.
Okay.
And so I
And
was
how
52.
long until you had kids?
That wasn't until we were probably in our, Trisha was in her late 20s. And I think, I think the first one was like 28. And the
Mm-hmm.
second one was probably about 30, 31. And so we
Wow.
waited till kind of late, because I was in Bible college and seminary, and you know, going to school full time, and we kept putting that off
Mm-hmm.
till the right time. And I don't know that there's ever a right time to have
Right.
kids. You're never ready.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but uh, you know, they're great, great kids. Love both of
Yeah.
them, Presley and Michaela.
Yeah. So you have two kids. Will you
Yeah.
tell? Can you say any? Can you introduce us to your kids real briefly without having to pay them $1? Keep it
um,
neutral.
Presley lives in the Nashville area and is working a couple of different jobs and pursuing a career in the, and this is how, I don't know this, the title for this whole thing, but you know, makeup and
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, that girl
Yeah.
world, you know.
Girl, she's very artistic, and yeah,
Yeah, both of them are very artistic. One of them,
yeah.
their category is uh, you know, makeup and those kind of things. And whereas the other one, Michaela, who lives in Chattanooga and married to Drew, and shout out to Drew if you're watching.
Yay,
Uh,
Drew.
and Drew, Michaela she does interior design. She's in school for interior design. So
Mhm.
both of them love that whole world of
Yeah,
creating. They're both very creative. And
right.
Trisha she is the operations manager for a luxury rental company here in Panama City Beach, Florida. And she has just incredible leadership skills and management skills. And so she's really doing a good job in her field. So,
Yeah.
and then I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
And I don't either. And one day we were on the phone and we're like, "What the hell are you doing?" I don't know. What the hell are you doing?
That's why I called Amelia, because I'm like, Amelia, help. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. How about you?
Nope. Yeah, that's kind of the nature. We both trade. We both trade in the market. You're Forex. I do stock options. Um, and so that kind of perpetually leaves us like we don't know what the hell we're doing.
I am glad that that career is a career that I can use to make a living, and then from that, give me some freedom to do some things that I think are coming up.
Right.
Well, so.
Yeah, and so I'm excited about that, and we'll tag that on at the end because I think everybody, including me, I want to hear what you're working on and what you're forward thinking about. So we're going to go back for a minute, and then we will get to the current. So you were in ministry for a long time, and I'm sure, and I know that you've probably seen some very interesting things. So please start us off on your journey. Pick your starting point.
Yeah, we were probably in ministry. I forget now if it was 20, 25 years, something like that. And, even though that's not where I'm at now, I really honor that part of my life. It's not something, there are moments that I've had like, God, did I waste my life doing something that now I don't believe exactly the same way? But I think it was a valuable part. I couldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the things that I went through then.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, we just had amazing things happen during those years. Just the people that we met, meeting people like you and Dalen, Deanna and Dwayne, and just lots of other people that we got to pastor and have relationships with that were awesome. And, just story after story, like miracle stuff that happened, which I just love. I love seeing people get free of stuff, and that's why I just thrived on that. I remember there was a lady one time that was suicidal, just really depressed, and I just, talked through a few things with her, gave her some insight on a couple of things, and then all of a sudden, she just starts laughing, and she just laughs for probably an hour nonstop. She can't stop laughing all the way home. We had to drive her home. She's laughing all the way home. She says she fell asleep laughing. I mean, and just to be a part of, not the cause of, but to be a part of, those kinds of things were cool. We went to India probably 4 or 5 times and did missions work there. And I remember one time I was with a friend of mine, Tony Woodall. We're sitting we're watching some kids do a dance for us. It's like a tribal dance thing that they're doing, and they prepared it just for us. And so we're giving them our full attention. And these couple of older men come up and tap my friend on the shoulder, and my friend looks up and said, "Yeah." And the guy says, "My friend here is blind." And my friend was like totally engrossed in what he was doing, watching the kids dance. And so he just turned and said, "Be healed." And he turned back around to watch the kids, just not nonchalant, but, there was no formula. There was no magic formula, And a couple of minutes later, we hear some noise, and the guy taps my friend on the shoulder and says, I can see.
Oh,
and it's like, and this blind guy gets, instantly healed with, no prayer, no nothing. And, those kind of things were amazing. We went to, we were in a little village in a mountain area, and we went into there was this lady. She hadn't walked in, I don't know how many years, probably, I want to say 12, but that may not be right. That may be thinking of a Bible story. But she hadn't walked in a long time. And it wasn't just me, but several of us prayed for this lady and took her by the hand, asked her if she wanted to try to walk. She got up out of the bed and walked for the first time in years. There were people who were watching from these little windows in this hut we were in. And I guess they went and told everybody in the village. So we walk out to leave, and the entire village has come out and lined the streets for us to pray for them. I mean, those are moments that are just precious to me. We got to go to a leper village one time,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, it's a horrible living conditions. They're the true outcasts of society there. They can't um, interact with anybody. They have to stay in the village or stay in their little compound kind of thing. Um, there's not much to eat. The government built these little rickety houses for them, and a lot of them were dying because of dysentery and yellow fever because the water was really bad. Nobody cared. And it was just so awesome to be able to take some of these lepers and hold them,
Wow.
like wrap my arms around them and kiss them on the forehead, because I knew nobody would touch these people. And and of course it was one of those moments like, am I going to act on what I believe?
Right. Right.
Oh no, am I going to get some kind of disease, whatever? But I just said, to hell with it. I'm going to, and we just embraced them and kissed them and touched them because that was the thing that they needed. And then we had the opportunity when we realized that the water was the real problem, not the cause of their leprosy, but because a lot of them were dying. Um, a bunch of people that we knew got together, and we built them a well there and helped them to have some clean water. I mean, those are priceless, wonderful experiences that I honor. Those years of ministry.
Yeah.
So we had some pretty cool stuff happen.
And those experiences can and will hopefully transcend your Christian experience, right? I mean, like anybody can walk in, and it doesn't have to do with the religion that you represent. Although maybe you think that at the time.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that now? Like, because there's no denying that kind of miraculous manifestation.
Sure.
It's incredible and it's amazing. Um, what do you think now, looking back on those, that your lens is a little different?
Yeah, my lens is very different.
Yeah.
I realized you and I were talking earlier about, I did one of those psychology tests one time, and one of the only thing I remember when it gave me feedback about my personality type was that you always feel like you're on the verge of a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's absolutely me. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Through this journey, I realized how much I see myself as an explorer.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of my favorite, probably my heroes, there's lots of them, but, my TV heroes was Jean-Luc Picard for president, Star Trek. Only because, he's the guy who's like, boldly go where no one's gone before. They're
Mm-hmm.
except they're exploring that universe out there. And for me, I'm trying to explore this universe in here. Like, how does all this work? How does the God thing work? How does this inner world, this inner space work? And I think it's a part of my dad was an investigator, so he uncovered truth. I've got a brother who, I remember when he was a kid, he would take cars apart, little toy cars. He would take them apart and put them back together because he wanted to see how they worked.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I wanted to know how people work. I want to know how this inner life, this spiritual thing, I want to know how this works. Which is a great thing, because, I love that. But, there's that saying that curiosity killed the cat.
Right.
Yeah, curiosity kills a whole lot of things.
It does. So you spent a lot of years pursuing that inner universe through education.
I did.
Right.
Yes.
Through like biblical education, Christian education.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a BA in Bible, then a Master of Divinity, and then a doctoral degree, and which was, I'm real thankful for. Love the tools, and in fact, one of the things that I learned when I was in school was they told me, don't. One of the pastors said, don't ever preach the same message twice.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it was good advice or not, I don't know, but so I sort of embraced that. So every time as a Bible teacher, as a preacher, as a pastor, every week I wanted to go to the scripture, try to find something that was fresh. Like it had to apply to me. It had to be not brand new, but fresh revelation, that.
Right.
And so what it did was, the good part of that is it made me dig into things. The bad part of that was it made me dig into things.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I started to see some things and started to raise some questions about, you know, for instance, like the fruit of the Spirit. Like, I began to realize, okay, the Bible says that the fruit of the Spirit is love and peace and joy and kindness and gentleness and self-control and stuff like that. And that's sort of what happens to a Christian, except then you start meeting Buddhists who have love and joy and peace and self-control. And so obviously they have the same exact spirit that they're saying the Christians have. And so that starts raising questions. I started to see people being, healed through, energy healers or, other kind of things like that. I took some Qigong classes, which is like Chinese medicine, kind of like a yoga, Tai Chi type of a thing. And so they're experiencing healing.
Nothing's going to make you backslide like yoga, right?
Right. I can't wait till we get to that topic.
I know.
And so, I realized at some point that I was worshiping a tribal deity rather than a universal reality. I had a little box that was sort of for this one group. And the truth is that love and kindness and peace and joy and miracles were happening to people all over the world who don't have any religion at all or a different religion. And, so my worldview began to change. And so in that change, I changed as well.
So did you find when you started to kind of maybe expand your thinking or seeing outside of the box that you had put God in, did you find that like exciting and exhilarating or disappointing and frustrating?
Yes.
Yeah, I
know. You probably have had the same experience. I know you'll want to share yours, but for me, discovery, not just to find some new thing, like the latest fad or but to really hone in on what's true. Probably, if those who are listening, I challenge them to this exercise because I did this. One of the tenets of Christianity and other religions maybe is that, when you become a believer in that system, God is in you, God dwells in you. And so I did an exercise and spent some time trying to find, all right, if God is in me, I'm going to look around and find out where he is. Is he living over here in my kidneys somewhere? Is he is Jesus in your heart? He's about this big and he kind of, gets in there like a little toy, and
yeah, snuggles up.
Snuggled up in there. And, after doing that for a while, I realized I've never in my life been able to find a separate being inside me other than myself, which leads to some other questions and so forth. But I challenge people to do that exercise, and because that's when you start being honest with yourself about what's real.
Yeah. So when you were sort of coming to, like, now you have a little perspective in hindsight, and when you're in the middle of it, it kind of feels like a cluster F. But now that you can look back and sort of see the journey and the process, did you come to a place in your faith where you began to question your faith, or was it more a transition built upon like just seeing bigger things? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I was questioning, oh my gosh, am I going to lose my salvation or, any of those kinds of things. It was more kind of building a layer on a layer on a layer of it. Well, if this is true, and then this is true, and then this is true, then I can start letting go of a way of looking at this. So letting go wasn't hard because I still honor the universal truths that I found there. I didn't throw the whole thing away because there's a lot of wisdom that I learned and gained in those experiences and in the scriptures. But I also found that like what is the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do to you. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's found in all religions. That Jesus is not just a Jesus quote; it's a Buddha quote, it's a Zen
Right.
quote. It's all over the place. And so it was an expansion, I think, rather than a. Uh, there was a little contraction when I went through that dark night of the soul,
Right. Right.
but it's an expansion of building, I think.
Rather than a rejection.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I am not, and I reject that experience or that faith system.
right,
I mean, things fall off, but only because it's like, um, new wine goes in new wineskins, right?
right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah, if truth is universal, then 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 I haven't lost anything. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I didn't lose my faith. I let go of the things that didn't serve me anymore. They weren't something I needed to believe anymore in order to be the person I needed to be. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was helpful.
So, I mean, a lot of people will deal with, maybe a crisis of faith or whatever, like just kind of coming to a place where they're really questioning. But your entire livelihood and
Uh-oh.
reputation was built on you as a pastor, a Pentecostal pastor who'd planted a church. I mean, you had a huge, that was your whole entire world. And so, how was the process from coming out of that paradigm? Because any of us can quietly lay down some beliefs, right? And be like, oh, I just kind
Right,
of don't think that anymore. Maybe we say some vague things on social media to clue people in, but
right.
this was your entire world.
It's not like I could do it quietly.
Right.
I, excuse me. Maybe I could have done it quietly, but I'm not. I'm not a quiet person.
Well, you could not have done it quietly because had you gone quiet about it, that would have been obvious as, you know what I mean? It's like not
I would
saying
have
anything is just
disappeared.
as obvious as just being
Right,
honest, right?
right. Too interconnected with ministries and people and reputation to just disappear. And it was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. I just wrote the book, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams: How to Live and Love the Life of Your Dreams. And so I'm kind of coming out of ministry. Excuse me.
It's all good.
I was coming out of ministry, and everything that I just had written in that book, like I thought, well, I can engage in this, and I can, revamp my life because my livelihood has been dependent on this, and so I'm gonna start over. And most people who are listening, right, they've probably been through those times where they've had to start over. It could be through a divorce, or they've lost a job, they had to move to a new place. um, they got arrested and lost everything. But it was really hard, dark night of the soul kind of stuff, because I didn't realize how much my identity was tied to that. I thought I could let that go pretty easy, but then nobody's calling me for counseling. I'm not the one giving them the answers. I'm not. um, and the community that's connected there. There's one of the great things about faith communities is the community part. Those
Right.
relationships. So I really, really missed all that, but I knew I couldn't go back. For me, probably other than my wife, and friends like you guys, I think what saved me through that was meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. I had to go inside, and find myself. And I remember, because I'm just old enough to remember, like, that was like the thing you said, I'm going off to find myself.
Right.
And sometimes that meant I'm just going off to get high for a couple of months and see what happens.
Yeah. Right.
But, genuinely, um, finding in meditation this place where I realize I am unborn, undying spirit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and by experience, knowing myself that way, knowing that being that I am, the truth of who I am is that spiritual being.
Mm-hmm.
when I get that, when people get that by experience, it's a major shift, because now who I am has nothing to do with my identity, has nothing to do with my reputation, the things I've accomplished, degrees that I have. None of that is the truth of who my identity is.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, it could kind of start to revibe my life, you know?
Right.
It start to experience life again, see how it's connected to everybody and everything, and just start to see the world completely different. You know, when your mind, when your mind is not, when your thoughts are not telling you who you are, because we have like this, we have these thoughts that we've built up over a lifetime, where we've gotten feedback from other people, and things we've done, and we have this image of ourselves. And when you quit listening to that image and start realizing who you really are, not that I get it like every day, and then some days it's like, who am I and what am I doing with my,
Yeah,
but
what the hell?
but it, but it's but you know, you start to wake up, and you
Right.
wake up to that reality. The world looks different, feels different, and you start coming out of that dark place.
Right.
At least
Yeah. So was meditation something that you were introduced to kind of like post ministry and post church, or was that something that you did as a Christian? Because I think,
I
how does that work?
yes and no. I mean, when I was much younger, I had a martial arts school, and before the Christian thing, and I, you know, heard about meditation, sort of read about it a little bit back then, because I had a Korean instructor that taught me, and so there was that Eastern connection that I
Mm-hmm.
started to grow fond of. And then when I became a Christian, it was years later, and you know, I started to embrace Christian meditation, and you know, then I started looking at things like the law of attraction. And a little side note, you know, like law of attraction people who are getting answers to prayer, who aren't Christians and they're not praying.
Right.
It was through meditation, you know, that they're finding these things happening that specifically like they were wanting. And so I started picking meditation back up, and it just grew over time, experimenting with different kinds, and getting more serious with it when I really had to, like,
Yeah.
oh God, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been
um,
there.
so
Okay. Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I'm wondering, since you guys retired from your church that you planted, and that church that you planted in Tennessee was where we connected. You
Mhm.
and Dalen were friends kind of for a while, and then we started coming to your church within the last year or two that it was open. And so we were with you guys through
Yeah.
that kind of difficult transition, and we were all kind of sitting around being like, got some things I'm wanting to talk about or feel a little unclear. Um, and then from Tennessee, we moved back home to Oregon, and you guys pursued your dream life down at the beach. And so now you and Trisha are beach bums, which is
Yes.
so wonderful for you guys. I can tell that it suits you very much so.
I love it.
Yeah. So what what now? Like, what is your like drive and desire now that you're not pastoring, but you're feeling more awake? Like, how are you oriented to this world? And what's your work?
That's a great question. I'll take your phone number and I'll call you when I when I have the answer.
Right. As far as you can see, as of September, what
As
did I
of
say?
today,
As of today, yeah.
as of today, you know, the more the more I come out of that funk or out of that dark place, um, you know, it goes back to what we've already talked about. I love traveling. I loved going to other countries. I love serving other people and loving people. I love meeting strangers and hearing their story and their lives. Um, I love helping people navigate through life, you know.
Right.
And now I've just got a different framework on how to help people get there. that book, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, like now I'm going back to my own book going, oh, that was really good.
Yeah.
Y'all need to read this. This is really good.
Yeah. Now, is that book a Christian book? Like, is it really rooted in like a Christian belief? Like, would a non-Christian be able to relate, or do you think they'd kind of be like?
Question. It probably is at the time I was trying to bridge this gap between what I really understood as kind of this universal truths that their dreams coming true, that they can have their dreams come true. There's no reason not to, with trying to fit that inside of a Christian box a little bit with, some grace mixed in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I wrote it today, I would write it a little bit different. But there are practical truths in there that I have re-implemented in my life, and it's helped me to, because I want to do coaching. I want to be able to travel. We're going to do things to help people figure out what they're supposed to do with their lives, help them to recapture their dreams, and how to start a business and get a business going, and those kind of things. And so I'm really looking forward to taking all this history now and channeling it into something that can help other people.
Yeah, and welcome to the ReVIBal podcast, where you can just like verbally process all of these great dreams that you have as you're pursuing your path and your road. It's going to be so great because we'll just sit here and talk about it.
Absolutely.
And share. So I would love to.
And by the way, thank you, because we had this idea, mm-hmm. and we're cutting up and we're laughing about it. And next thing I know, Amelia's like, we're going to do this.
Yes.
We're really going to do this. And I'm like, okay, I think we should. And, yes. And you've run with it. And I'm so glad, because I think it really does help us to process, but I think it's going to help other people, because people can relate to these kinds of things because they've been through it or they're trying to get through it. And they have these questions too, and sometimes they haven't figured out the answers yet, but when people are a little, just one step ahead, sometimes is all it takes to help somebody navigate their story.
Right. And I think that it's super helpful, especially in a time of like change or transition, which I would love to do episodes on change and transition. But when things get difficult or dark during that kind of time frame, you can pain makes you feel like I'm going the wrong way or I'm doing something wrong, mm-hmm. And so to sort of demonstrate for people that is a part of the courage of changing your life and owning your life is weathering a little bit of a lost feeling that you may not be able to articulate or put your finger on, and it can be kind of confusing and you can feel like you're just sort of free falling. And it is a part of the process. I think it's the part of the process where we learn to surrender instead of fix and solve or fight, fight or flight, even, that we just learn to trust.
Because and sometimes you want to run, but there's nowhere to go.
Right. Yeah. You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah, and you might mention this when you share your story, but it has the potential to force us into being gut level honest with where we are.
Yes. Yes. I reflected on that a lot when I have gone through different things in my life that I've changed. But I remember one of the big changes I made was I stopped homeschooling and put my kids in school. And thing for me, and I mean, I could talk about that another time, but basically, like I sort of uncovered the parts of that decision to homeschool that were rooted in fear. And then, I wasn't going for that anymore. And so when I let that decision go, I immediately felt connected back to myself, right? Because I wasn't feeling buried and I was honoring like my own limitations. And I just swore to myself, like I will, like, once I felt more connected to myself, I could see all the ways that I was not listening all those years, where the inner part of me was like, maybe this doesn't suit you, maybe there's a different way, but I was not willing to look outside of the box because I was afraid. And so once I did, and I was pressed to a point, like ran out of gas, breakdown, before I was like, okay, fine. Like what else is out there? And I made that decision and felt more connected to myself. And I just promised, like, I'll never ignore those things again. Like, I will always tell thyself the truth, because it doesn't serve at all to try harder or fix or solve or buffer yourself. It connects you back to a place where you can just be more honest with how you feel and what you want.
Yeah, it's one of the keys to life, really.
Right. Well, to living authentically,
Yeah.
because it's like once you start making changes and you've kind of embraced this idea that you can create your own life. For me, once I got those base premises down, it was like so important that I walk with my most authentic foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's like this constant recentering and telling yourself the truth and not just trying to make things go round in your world.
And not, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
And not being afraid of that truth, because most of us are afraid of the truth. Whether it's in religion or whether it's in our own lives or our own experiences, we're afraid. I don't think we're afraid of the truth. I think we're afraid of the implications of the truth.
Exactly. Yeah. Because we have built a construct of our life a lot of times that we're working like very, very hard to maintain. Like, right. I'm the homeschooling mother of 6 and I'm
the pastor, of the church, the congregation.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was not an option to let the truth in, because then it would have challenged like all of the things that I had worked so hard for and was known for. And so it's like you can kind of tell yourself the truth sometimes, but if you feel a truth coming on that you would probably have to like share with other people, like, oh, this is my new truth, that's, I think, where we want to shut the door, right? Yeah. We don't want to have to like be known so vulnerably in that way. So and
yet to avoid that is to avoid ourselves, our authenticity, our dreams, our everything. It's a hard, unfortunately for most of us, maybe not for everybody, but for a lot of us, our construct, our world has to crash a little bit so that we will question, so that we will become honest, and we will admit, okay, this really doesn't work.
Yeah.
What was I saying to myself? How was I lying to myself about this? So, I think people tend to face truth either voluntarily. They're like, most of the time for me, not all the time, but a lot of time, like, ooh, what is this? Ooh, what is this? Ooh, I want to know. Mm-hmm. Or the crisis happens and they have to face the truth. And either way, one day we're all going to have to face the truth in our lives. So, yeah. And I don't mean that in evangelist-like kind of way. I mean that like that in everything that we do. If it doesn't work, it's not ever going to work.
Yeah.
Eventually we're going to have to go, okay, I need to step back here and look at my beliefs, my life, whatever, and be willing to boldly go where I've never gone before.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm a creature of comfort. And so I'm kind of humbled sometimes to reflect on the degree of crisis that has to come to me before I'm like, okay. Because of the peaceful nature that I have, like, I just really want to keep everything even, like, I don't want to challenge anything or like dig in. I do, but at the same time, I don't. And so I've had to go through some pretty painful things before I could realize, like, okay, maybe I need to look more honestly at this, come what may. Yeah.
And it's the relationships usually that feel the most, because we're relational people, mm-hmm. and we're afraid that those truths, whatever they may be, are going to disrupt relationships. When I moved out of Christianity as a religion, moved out of pastoring, relationships fell off. Some of it was because I was going through that dark night. I tend to, when I'm trying to figure something out, I withdraw, try to regain my life and then come back out. But, it's costly to relationships sometimes. But, the higher cost is that we don't live our fullest, most authentic life. And I can't live that way.
Hmm. Well, it's like that quote that we talked about the last episode that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote in her book. That if, you can maybe help me re-summarize, but it was basically like, if you don't let what's inside of you out, it will destroy you. And
Yeah.
so eventually you have to face your own truth. And I think that facing your truth is similar in power as like facing your fears. Because, for instance, in the truth about me wanting to not homeschool is I didn't want to spend that much time with my kids. 24/7 was way too much for me, and I had no idea how to admit that, especially when I was plugged into like a really thriving, wonderful homeschool community where a lot of women were doing it well and like loving it. And so I could
They
not bring,
lied. They
they lied.
lied.
Well, I don't know.
They
I'm
didn't
going
have
to give
6
them the
kids.
benefit of the doubt. But for me, I did not enjoy that proximity to
Yeah.
them. It was drowning and it was overwhelming, but there was no place for me to be honest with myself about it, because I could kind of see in the distance of my heart that I did not enjoy this mass amount of time I was spending with my kids. But the only thing I could see was that just made me like a really terrible mom. And I couldn't admit that, because where would I go from there?
Hmm.
Where would I go from saying, I don't want to spend this much time with my kids? And so then it just felt like this really selfish decision to like uproot them out of what they had known and put them in public middle school and be like, good luck. But it actually ended up being like a really beautiful thing, and we all thrived for it. And what I learned was that it sort of, when we restructured, I found the parts of me that were amazing mom.
Yeah.
Like for once I was like, oh, I'm like such a great mom, because I was in more of an element of support instead of like being the one who's creating like all their life experiences and in charge of every detail of their life. They had a life and exposure outside, and so I was just there to support them and encourage them and love them, which is so much better for me. I thrive in that. So to face your fears is so important, because usually what's on the other side of them is freedom.
It
And
is.
yeah, so
Yeah. If there's a takeaway, I hope anybody who's listening gets, is don't be afraid of the truth.
yeah.
Don't be afraid of the truth. You're going to be, but don't.
Right.
Don't let that fear control you, because there is freedom on the other side in whatever it is. Because if it's truth, if it's, I've known people who won't go to the doctor because they're afraid they might have cancer or something like that. Well, that doesn't make it go away. If they really have cancer, it's not going to go away because they don't face the truth. And if you can deal with whatever that thing you're afraid of, that truth you're afraid of, it's usually very liberating on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Amen.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about what you have up and coming, what you're like really excited about these days?
No,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
excited. No, to be honest, I'm excited because now from where I'm at, I can look back and I can see almost everything that I've ever wanted has happened. Not every. There's some new dreams that I have. There's some new, uh, little pieces that I want to see happen. But I wanted to see people healed, and then I got to see all these I wanted to help other pastors, and I coached these other pastors in planting churches. I wanted to plant churches around the world. I got to do that. I mean, all these things. I got to live in Florida at the beach. We bought a house that's on the lake, and I can get in a kayak and go right over to the beach, because the Gulf of Mexico goes right into our lake, and it's just these. I'm being able to look back and see, I'm living the things that I've wanted to live in spite of all the stuff I went to. And so I'm, that excitement and that vibe, that energy is returning to be able to help other people see those things happen in their lives too.
yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know that was not completely exhaustive, and there's so much more that we will insert and unravel in our journey on the ReVIBal podcast, where we can, reach into our well of experience and continue to sort of share our lives with the listeners and let them know more and more who we are. But thank you for that overview. And I'm excited for all of the things that you have up and coming. And I'm just really thrilled to be here on the ReVIBal podcast so we can share with everybody the revived life.
Yes. So tell people, if people want to subscribe, how do they do that? And if they want to email, how do they do that?
Great. Okay. Please email us at therevibal@gmail.com. It's ReVIBal. And we have a Facebook page called The ReVIBal, and also you can follow us on Instagram called The ReVIBal. And so if you get there right now and there's nothing going on, we are two not super tech savvy people trying to launch this great platform and dream that we have. So it is coming, I promise you. We just might not have all cylinders firing right now. And the podcast will be on iTunes and also on YouTube. So
awesome.
Yeah, great. Great talking to you, Chuck.
Right. See ya. Thanks.
See ya.